My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds or geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic, multiverse. It's mega Christmas, strangest franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome once again to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
And in a new matrimonially grand way today.
Yes, to the people listening at home, do I sound any different now that I'm married?
You sound like you got a slight tightening around your left ring finger.
Yes. So yes, thank you to everybody for your patience. Our last episode came out on March 28th, and this episode will go out on June 13th. So a little bit over 2 months since our last episode. So today is all going to be about catching up on what we've been doing since the last episode. But we want to start off with a major announcement about the future of the podcast. And Beeper, I'll give it to you. Explain to people what's going to be happening in the next couple months.
All right. Well, I don't know if I should start with a joke about what. Well, we did discuss about episode 300 being about the movie 300, but we'll see if that holds true. However, episode 300 shall be the final episode of, at the very least, this iteration of the Bat Jar podcast. Who knows what the future will hold? I don't like to make absolute statements, but given the new matrimonial state and jam and all kinds of other real big factors, including the time difference between the host and co-host, we've thought about it, prayed about it, looked at other options to stay in touch, because Average Joe and I still want to stay in touch, but perhaps it shall not be in the podcast. Well, it shall not be in the podcast form.
I mean, we could, in theory, still meet and have these conversations and just not record them.
I mean, hilarious if we still had like a little agenda for our conversations and like still did it through the podcasting app and just like not record it.
Yeah, that'd be something.
I feel like a bit of a waste if we did that much, but you know.
Yeah, so total transparency here. For those who have followed the show for a long time, it has been almost 7 years since I started the Bat Jar with Asian John. It was back in...
did we even know each other at that point?
Oh yeah, we had lived together by that point, because we lived together in 2015.
Oh, you're right, we did.
We went inside out as a house, remember?
Oh man, I'm getting old.
But in all seriousness, folks, it has been a long time, almost 300 episodes. And, you know, when we started, it was a lot of fun for me kind of learning how to be a podcaster, how to edit the sound files, how to do all the things. And if I'm being totally honest, just that excitement and enthusiasm for like the technical aspects of this is not there anymore. It's becoming more and more of a chore or like a job than it did in the beginning. In the beginning, I was really excited to dedicate, hours of my time to editing and scheduling and doing all the research. And, I think in the earlier parts of the pandemic, this podcast was a great source of consistency and constancy for me, and it allowed me to spend time with people when I couldn't be in person. But I think as we were coming out of the pandemic, just acknowledging that I want to be like filling my life with opportunities to serve, like my parish community and whatnot, but also things that bring me life and are restorative for me. And if it's, I don't want anyone to walk away from this like blaming Tater Tot or blaming me getting married for why the podcast is coming to an end. It has
Fair
nothing to
enough.
do
I'm
with
sorry.
that.
I'm sorry if that's what my sounded like, but there is still an aspect of it, like to me too, like being a father, but also working full time as a teacher has been a pretty big. It was pretty big in why we kind of toned it down for a little bit, also. And I know, and for the listeners too, like there were other conversations we did talk about getting an editor and thinking about maybe following that aspect of it, but there's number of things that made it so that I
Yeah,
mean
this is not a revenue generator for us. This is just purely a
that
hobby.
too.
This is purely a hobby. So, if we were trying to become like content creators and like go all in on this, then sure, we would pay uh for advertisements, and we would spend more time on social media promoting the show, and we would hire editors to do the hard stuff for us. But the truth be told, this is just meant to be a hobby. And in almost 7 years of being on the Bachelor, I feel like I've said what I have to say about a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is that like even though there are still themes in the bat jar, I feel like there is a certain level of repetition starting to happen, which, you know, wouldn't be a bad thing if we were more like a news or like if we were keeping up with all the new things that happen. But I think that for me, that was also one of the big things. I don't have like, I would still have the time to record an episode every week about something that I've got, back cataloged knowledge of. If we did an episode on 40K on Warhammer 40K, I'd be able to do that. I'd be, certain animes I might be able to do an episode. But if I have to like watch a new thing, do research, which I'm already much worse than average show at doing consistently, that's also becoming a lot more of the time investment than, giving my opinion about something I'm already passionate about.
Yeah, and for you, it's like it's been almost 3.5 years you've been on the podcast now, which it's not as long as me, but it's still a considerable amount of time. You're longer serving than any of my other co-hosts.
But not in amount of episode, I don't think. I think
I guess yeah. I don't know that we'd have to like count because I can't remember. I can't remember when we started
that
switching to every 2 weeks.
yeah, I think Asian John is still well, because I'm just trying to remember.
Now you got me curious. I'm gonna look this up.
Because I think the One Piece episode was it was like 120 something, I think. I could be completely wrong. My memory is terrible.
Okay, so I just took a quick look. I remember one of your earliest episodes as regular co-host was the Sonic the Hedgehog episode,
Yeah.
and that was episode 165.
Oh, okay. So actually, no, I might be because
Asian John only made it for the first 2 years. He like episode, I think it was like episode 104 was his last one.
okay.
He's made a couple appearances since then, but
Yeah.
I think
I didn't realize Pixel Patch was the co-host that long.
yeah, well, he was co-host for about 6 months,
Okay.
and then Ben the Movie Buff and Doctor What kind of alternated for another 6 months before you came on.
Right. Okay. Oh
So
yeah, I
regardless,
thought you'd gone directly from Pixel Patch to me as the kind of main. I didn't realize there was that much of a like little middle in it.
yeah, well,
Proving
originally,
my ignorance of about it.
yeah, this is some
Podcast I
deep
shouldn't
cut Batjar
host.
trivia. But originally, Pixel Patch had asked for like a sabbatical as he was getting married, and then they were having a child, and then so I kind of like asked Doctor What and Ben the Movie Buff to kind of step in and essentially fill that gap during his sabbatical, and then when the sabbatical was coming to an end, he was then like, yeah, actually, I'm gonna have to transition out altogether. So
Yeah. Yeah, because when I started, Ben the Movie Buff was still quite regularly there on the show.
yeah, especially during the
Especially
early
for the
days of the
pandemic,
pandemic when he wasn't able to work on film productions, he was like, "Oh, can I come talk about movies and stuff with you guys?"
Yeah.
Um, so what does this mean? The podcast will end. Episode 300 will indeed be our last episode, and we will talk about the movie 300 for that. I still haven't watched it in its entirety, so it'll be a first for me. So if you're doing the math, it means that our final episode will probably come out sometime in August. We're going to try and make it as special as possible by having as many of our regular co-hosts that we have mentioned just in passing here be a part of that conversation. I don't think they've all actually all met each other in person or virtually.
Huh.
I think at this point, I'm pretty sure you've been in virtual. I think you've been in an episode with every single one of them at different times.
Yes.
But I don't think they've all been in one conversation together.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't think so.
So
I don't even think. Yeah, me, Pixel Patch, and Asian John have all been in one yet.
No. Well, actually, I'm trying to remember. Was Pixel Patch there for the One Piece episode?
Oh, actually, no. Yes, he was. Yes, I'm pretty sure he was. So I guess at that point we would have all been there.
Yeah, but
What number was that now? Because I thought it was 120 something, but I guess not.
All right, let me look it up again. I already closed the tab, but I will bring it back up for you.
Sorry.
We're not going to live as a podcast to see the live action One Piece show come out.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty thankful for that.
So episode 103.
Okay. Oh, right. So it was pretty close to the transition then.
Yeah. So yes, we're gonna keep putting episodes every couple weeks between now and the till we get to episode 300, which will probably be in August, and then after that, we'll probably keep the show online for a while, but eventually we're gonna stop paying for the hosting fees, and it'll just disappear. So for those of you who are just discovering the podcast, you've got a couple months to binge the whole thing.
Download all the episodes you want to download so they're on your computer permanently.
Yeah.
Any of our friends who listen to the podcast, if you want to keep embarrassing things we've said, make sure to download those episodes right now. Although I suppose, do you have a backup of them? A physical
Yeah,
backup?
I would have all the MP3 files from the different recordings.
Oh, there you go.
But if someone really wants those, they can email me and ask for them. Anyway, one funny story from my move. So when Tater Tot and I got married, we had to move from Halifax back to Ottawa. So naturally, I booked a U-Haul truck so that we could load up everything in her apartment. And wouldn't you know it, the U-Haul computer system across North America just happened to be down when I arrived to pick up my truck.
Oh, wow. Yeah, U-Haul is great, except when it's not.
Well, what made it interesting is that they have no way of manually processing one of these rentals anymore. It's all like done in the computer. And you would think a company that existed before computers would have like some kind of backup method of manually doing things, but no, it's...
Yeah.
So I waited for 3 hours for their
Oh.
computer system to come back on, while the truck I was meant to take was just sitting in like outside. Like I could look at it.
Yeah, you could see it.
You could see it, but I couldn't take it because their computers weren't working. And the worst part about it all is that, it was a U-Haul detachment like out of a gas station. So it wasn't even like an actual U-Haul office. So the poor woman, her name was Rose. Rose, if you're probably not listening to this, but you were very kind and generous. Poor woman's just trying to run a gas station, and then she's got to deal with all this U-Haul stuff on the side. I felt so bad for her.
And it's not the primary thing she's doing, and yeah, I've had that too happen. Actually, the last move weirdly, it was when I had to drop off the truck was different than when I had picked it up because they had different opening hours. So I picked it up at a gas station, and then I had to drop it off in, a field in the middle of nowhere, which was interesting.
So what's the most annoying thing that's happened to you since our last episode?
The most annoying thing that's happened to me? The most annoying thing that's happened to me is I spent about an hour and a half. I was doing a Kahoot for my students to review their exam, and it kept telling me that there were features that were using Kahoot Premium, and I could not for the life of me figure out what the actual feature was, because it said it for every question. So I tried changing all, like, the length of time, everything, and then I finally discovered that the theme I had picked was a premium theme, and all I had to do was just change the theme for the entire thing, but it took me like an hour and a half, part of which I was trying to handle a class of 30 grade 7s whom I had told this Kahoot would happen. I'm like, guys, I'm just trying to figure it out, so we're going to do this in the meantime. But they got pretty rowdy and excited and really wanted the Kahoot to start. And I was very baffled and frazzled and annoyed. And it was really warm. So it was, yeah, that's the most annoying thing that's happened to me.
That'll do it. And for anyone who's wondering, yes, our wedding was wonderful. I was initially skeptical of having a wedding planner, but I'll tell you, day before, day of, she was very helpful. I was not worried about anything. Tater Tot's bridesmaids actually called her bride Chilla because she was so relaxed.
Ah, there you go.
And we got a preview of photos from our photographer like a week after, and can't wait to see the rest. So thanks for everybody who was praying for us, and keep praying for us, because transitioning to married life is it's obviously wonderful and everything, but it's also a transition, moving from living your life just for yourself to living for somebody else.
Yeah, the whole wedding is one day, marriage is a lifetime.
Yes,
very true.
So with that being said, we're going to use this episode really just to catch up on all the major pop culture-y things that have happened, particularly the movies that have come out since our last episode, because there have been a lot, and I'm curious to see how many of these you actually ended up seeing. So we'll start.
Spoilers, probably none.
All right, well, let's start with the one that came out most recently after our last episode on Shazam. Would have been John Wick Chapter 4.
Oh, I have not seen that one.
Okay.
But it like, in that list, there are probably some that I would like to see and others I would not. I do want to see John Wick Chapter 4, but weirdly enough, I still haven't seen 2 and 3.
Oh.
I don't know how that happened, but I've only ever seen the first John Wick movie. Like, I've seen a lot of clips, and I know a lot of the things that happen, and I want to watch them all, but I just never got around to it. I think probably they're on Netflix, right?
Yes.
I think they are, and I think that's why, because we don't have Netflix, so I would need to take some time off and watch all of those. But it's an exciting. I hear it was a good end to the series.
Yes, it's definitely the final chapter for John Wick's story. Donnie Yen is in it as a blind guy again, except this time he doesn't have the Force. He just somehow is super good at using guns and fighting, even though he's blind.
No, of course. It's Donnie Yen.
Yes. And it's long. Like, it's almost 3 hours long. Like, it was probably too long.
Well, I guess they probably just made the choice not to make it 2 movies or 3 movies like the Fast and Furious, and just decided to get it over with.
Yeah. And then another thing, there's one moment, this is not really a spoiler, but there's one moment where John Wick jumps out of a building. It's like 5 stories off the ground. He lands like flying. He like falls onto the hood, or not the hood, but the top of like a van, and then rolls off the van onto the ground. He groans for like 2 seconds, and then he gets up and he starts running again. And I'm like, action movies, there's a heightened sense of reality, but that moment where he just jumps out of a building, falls onto a van, then falls on the ground and gets up again,
that kind of
pulled me out. I'm like, this is a little ridiculous. But with that being said, I did enjoy it. I saw it with a friend, and I would give it probably like 2.9 out of 4 bat cookies.
Oh, okay.
I still haven't seen the third John Wick, so of the John Wicks
I've seen... So of the 3 that you've seen, where would you rate it?
Probably the best, actually, even though it's really long.
Oh, okay.
Maybe the first one is tighter. I don't know.
I mean, the first one was pretty like it kind of had to be because it didn't have like the whole good faith behind it yet, right? And it was kind of Keanu Reeves restarting action after a while of not being in it, like pretty much since The Matrix. He hadn't done anything that big,
Yeah.
and then so I think people weren't giving it as much slack for things, or so it kind of had to be a little more like punchy, but it worked.
Yeah. Next, right after that, was Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
I am really sad that I still have. We were supposed to, but then something happened because I think of all the movies that are out right now, the one I want to go see the most. I know the one Mjolnir wants to go see the most. I think is going to be the last one we talk about, or close to it, is going to be Spider-Verse. So we're probably going to see Spider-Verse first, but I'm definitely going to see Spider-Verse and the D&D movie.
So Tater Tot and I saw the D&D movie right before Easter. She actually understood more of the, like, there's a lot of deep cut D&D references that I just didn't get. But I
Well,
was
a lot of them also have to do with the Forgotten Realms setting, which you've never played in, right?
I,
Because
I don't think so.
you've only ever played the how many have you played another D&D campaign, like
I've
campaign?
I've played a couple
Is the
one
one you played
shots
together?
that
Okay.
Dan Hatton came up with, but
Well, yeah, then I doubt that they've been. I mean, they might have been, but usually one shots, especially if they're like one shots the DM made up himself, usually they won't place it in a preset world.
mm. But despite my not knowing anything about D&D, it was actually like pretty engaging, pretty funny. It was an enjoyable movie. Definitely not like the greatest movie ever made, and box office wise, it hasn't even cracked 100 million.
Really? Because I've heard mostly only good things about it, but
Yeah, I guess it just
like,
didn't crack a wide enough appeal
yeah, I guess so.
or something like that, or Chris Pine isn't a big enough box office draw.
Eh, maybe, but
Who can say?
eh,
Um, just that, yeah, it was enjoyable. I'm glad I saw it. You don't need to know D&D well to enjoy the movie. And I think it's actually available for digital at home now because it was out in
okay.
March. So if people want to watch it, I'd recommend even just renting it at home. I'm trying to think, did I enjoy it more or less than John Wick? I feel like I did. I feel like I have to at least give it a little higher rating. So I'll give Dungeons and Dragons 3.1 out of 4 bad cookies.
Ooh, a full 0.2 higher than John Wick.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when your metric is out of 4, 0.2 is actually pretty significant.
All right. The Super Mario Brothers movie, which has become the highest grossing film of the year by far.
Yeah, it's one of the like I would like to see it somewhat, but I'm not like urgently in need to see it. Like I heard good things about it. I think the only real criticism I heard like more or less consistently is why didn't they use like Nintendo music instead of using like pop songs in the score? But I think that's a little bit of a nitpick, although I listen to a lot of video game music when I'm working, when I'm studying, when I'm working out, like so I would appreciate that, but I think
Oh,
on the
there's a lot of
whole,
Nintendo music in the movie.
yeah,
Because
but it wasn't like, there wasn't
it's
like Delfino Plaza playing for a while, or like the iconic, not necessarily like the iconic songs from games, but the songs that are iconic as songs, if that makes sense.
yeah, there's a lot of the musical cues and the motifs kind of written into the score.
Yeah, but not an actual like, you know, full on song.
Like here's what I'll say about the movie. It got poor response from critics, and that's because I would say there's not a lot of a like story to the movie, and that was intentional. Even Shigeru Miyamoto was like, just don't try to invent like a story and an explanation for the world.
Yeah,
That's
just
what the live action movie tried to do.
and it was terrible.
So it was an enjoyable experience as a person who grew up playing Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, all that, because there were
Which
just
I think is what it was meant to be too, right?
yeah, it was just chock full of Easter eggs. Like at one point they're doing Mario Kart for like it's No good reason. It just happens. Like, we need to get from point A to point B. Let's use these carts to do that.
As one would do, yeah.
As one would do. My worst fear was realized, and Seth Rogen laughed like Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. I was like, ugh.
See, they should have gotten the OG like N64 sound bites for him where he doesn't even talk. He just like.
But, you know, people were really repping on Chris Pratt for being cast as Mario. And to his credit, he uses, like, you can tell it's Chris Pratt, but he's not just using his normal speaking voice. Like, he's putting on an Italian New Yorker voice. He's like, you know, he's not just using his own voice as the character, which I appreciated because a lot of celebrities just use their own voices.
Well, especially when you got like a voice that is very iconic already and that like, you know, has mostly been one voice actor for most of the time it's existed. And like, yeah.
My only criticism of this movie is that honestly, there were a couple moments that were pretty scary for little kids. And this, if you had changed those scenes up, this would have been palatable to a much younger audience than it was. Because other than that, it was pretty inoffensive.
But at the same time, it's not technically aimed at them because they won't get the nostalgia out of it. You know?
No, that was fair.
I don't know, because I feel like if you've got game references, like, I don't know.
That's they're more for the parents.
Yeah, but like, and maybe, you know, like Nintendo is starting to like release some of the older games for the consoles. Like the Switch has like an emulator for older consoles that is starting to get more things out on it. But like, it's not, you know, it's not a lot of marketing at this point either, right? Which it doesn't have to be, but it's useful, and especially when you're trying to aim things at kids, like, and you know, unfortunately, that is usually what your primary purpose is. Your primary purpose, or at least secondary purpose, somewhere in the back of your mind, you're trying to merchandise, and if you do it on classic Nintendo stuff, you're not really merchandising.
So would this be one of the ones you would go see if you had the space to?
Yeah, but it's not high on the priority list, but most of the other ones I don't want to go see.
So far your priority would be like D&D, John Wick, then Mario?
Of the ones we've talked about so far?
Yeah.
I think I would put Mario a little bit above John Wick just because I haven't seen the other ones.
Fair enough. Based on my nostalgia alone, I had a really great experience with the Mario movie. So I'll give it like probably an unjust, but I'm going to give it a 3.4 out of 4 bat cookies.
Yeah, we never claimed to be objective on this podcast, did we?
No, definitely.
You got me in to talk about One Piece. There was no way I was going to be objective with that.
Yeah. All right, so Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 came out the first week of May. I know that's like the one franchise within the MCU you've always spoken well of.
Yeah. I think that one is above John Wick and Mario, but is still like, I don't know, like my jadedness over the MCU has not improved, and like the kind of pseudo break I've taken from it hasn't made me want to return to it more. Like, again, I think the only reason I would put it that high is because I did enjoy the first two, and for the sake of seeing James Gunn's last entry in the MCU, but I don't feel super interested or invested in the story and the characters as a whole, or its place in the greater MCU either. So I don't know.
Well, it people have given it praise for not feeling like a standard MCU movie because it really does feel like this is the third James Gunn Guardians movie. They obviously had to address the events of movies that happened, you know, after Volume 2 because it completely like reset where some of the characters are.
Yeah.
But for the most part, this doesn't really set up anything like for the future of Marvel. It really just tries to wrap up these character stories well.
Oh, that's good.
It is darker than the other two. Like it gets a lot into Rocket's backstory, which involves like scenes that portray like animal cruelty.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't know.
Well, I just put that out there because some people might be sensitive to that kind of stuff, and
Oh,
if
yeah,
they're
that's true.
because
But
the
it's
Guardians movies are generally like comedies, right? So if you're going
yeah,
into it being like, oh, I'm ready for a nice fun comedy, you're gonna get some like a whiplash because it's not all of that. This like there's still lots of humor for sure, but it's
yeah.
not just that this time around.
Yeah, I don't remember some YouTuber I listened to was like, yeah, it's probably has some of the best moments of any of the Guardian movies, but isn't necessarily the best of the three.
It's my favorite of the three because I never enjoyed the fact that they were mostly comedies. I liked the more serious tone this one took. It felt like it,
Okay.
it wrapped up things pretty well. I mean, some of the anyway, I don't want that would get into spoilers. So I enjoyed it.
How's the
Probably
soundtrack? Is it does like does the soundtrack feel like the songs are more appropriate to what's going on, or does it feel more like just they put popular pop songs from the 80s?
um so they just like he not Mario Star Lord has a Zune now, like a Zune media
Yeah.
player, so it is more songs from like the 90s and the early 2000s. But
Uh,
once again, like was a lot of music I didn't recognize, so it was like I need to watch the movie again to be like, what are these songs actually saying, and does it relate to what's going on right now?
okay.
So
Because
yeah,
that is one of the things, like, right now, having not seen the third one, when the chain starts playing in the second movie, that's just like that was just perfect. So hopefully there's something like it.
yeah. So it's probably my favorite of the Guardians movies. And people have like pointed out, it's like, yeah, the MCU is back or the MCU is better. And it's like, well, a lot of the things that made this movie what it is aren't part of the MCU going forward. So
And are also like probably specifically because it's somebody who's not returning to the MCU, so he can do kind of what he wants.
mhm. So I'm trying to think if I were to give this a bad cookie rating. It's definitely a better movie than Mario, but I guess I didn't walk away like feeling as happy go lucky about it. So I'll give it a 3.3 out of 4 bad cookies. Guardians 3.
Guardians 3 3.3.
Yeah, 3.333. Evangelion, Once Upon a Time or whatever.
No, it's shoot. I used to know these because it's you cannot return, you cannot redo, you cannot something. Has 4.4.4 as 4.44 come out yet?
Yes.
It
Yeah.
has.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime Video.
I need to watch that
Yes.
because I've seen all the rest.
All right, so where does Guardians fit in the ranking of movies like you would want to see? Is it below D&D?
Nah, it's probably below John Wick.
At the bottom?
I don't know. I don't
You've
like.
spoken so well of the
I
James Gunn
know,
Guardians movies.
but this is also like. I don't know. I feel like there's just a severe drop after the number one and number two. Honestly, the only one I would make plans to go out of my way to go see is the D&D movie. The rest of them, like even Spider-Verse, it's only just because I know I'm gonna have to watch it because of who I married. But myself, I don't even know if I would necessarily go out of my way to see that one.
Okay. Well, shortly after Guardians came out, we had Fast X. I
Yeah,
only
that's
got a chance to see this past week. It came out the weekend of my wedding, so I didn't prioritize seeing it.
I mean,
I know you have zero interest in the Fast franchise.
I still haven't seen a full Fast and Furious movie, so a movie which by all accounts is a celebration, for better or for worse, of everything that Fast and Furious was. I could not care less about that movie.
I really enjoyed it nonetheless. Unfortunately, like these movies have been going on so long and they have so many characters, they don't do a good enough job of balancing them all. Like it's
Well,
some
didn't they
character.
also try to like bring literally everybody back for this one too?
Yes and no. It's like they're like the over the
Like,
last
if you try
couple
to bring
ones they keep.
everybody from 9 previous movies back into a movie, like it doesn't matter how well it worked. You're gonna have trouble.
It's not that they tried to bring everybody back from the last 9 movies. Is that basically since like 5 was the first time they brought everyone together. And then 6, they added more people, but then some of the characters died. So then 7 was kind of a smaller crew. 8, people you thought were dead came back. 1 new character was introduced. 9, new characters were introduced, and people who you thought were dead came back to life.
I see. So like,
And so in
at this
10,
point,
it's
they're
like
just
everybody who
putting
was still there in 9, plus they've introduced a couple new characters on top of that. So it just keeps getting fuller and fuller. And there's certain characters, like there's really nothing, like just the way that the story was written, there isn't a lot for them to do.
they
And,
just can, say one thing.
honestly,
Oh, sorry, Jam Jam. You're absolutely right. Somebody comes in and says danger to the manifold and then leaves.
yeah. Honestly, ever since Paul Walker died, they've shifted towards like Vin Diesel's character as like the main character of the movies. And, he's never been my favorite character in those movies. So the fact that he gets to be like the central focus and knowing that he's like the main creative producer person behind the scenes, it's like, yeah, this is clearly turning into a machine to kind of like boast yourself. But with that all being said, I still enjoyed it. It was still a ton of fun. A fun Easter egg for me is that Jason Momoa is in the movie as the main villain. And Alan Richardson is in the movie as like a cop guy. And they have some scenes together. And it's a funny thing for me because, everyone would know that Jason Momoa plays Aquaman in the movies now. But they would forget that Alan Richardson played Arthur Curry and Aquaman back on Smallville back in the 2000s. So you've got this movie with 2 Aquamen talking to each other. Beautiful.
I see. Yeah, and they're both impressive people instead of being, the Super Friends Aquaman.
Yeah. And it's getting, it's like the cars. It's not only do the humans in these movies have superpowers like John Wick, but the cars do as well, because the cars, some of the cars do things and like that car should not be able to do that.
Well, no, they were reinforced and souped up so that they can do these things,
Yeah, I mean, there's a shot in the trailer where Dom's car is able to it has like 2 cables attached from 2 different helicopters, and he's able to drive fast enough so that the 2 helicopters collide into each other and explode.
Right. I still think the thing I don't remember which one is in which one do they have the entire bank safe being driven around and drifted by 2 cars.
Oh, Fast 5, baby. Best
without
one.
even having tension in the chains. It's like there are so many physical impossibilities.
It looks so cool though.
Well, I know. I've seen that scene. It looks cool, but there isn't a single moment when I'm watching that where I'm not thinking about how impossible it would be for a car, any car, regardless of their size, to go that kind of speed with that kind of a thing behind them. Like a tank would have trouble dragging that behind it, even with the amount of power they have. And at those speeds, it would basically be impossible.
Yeah, so that being said, I can acknowledge the flaws in Fast X. And while I enjoyed it, I won't give it more than 3 out of 4 bad cookies.
Fair enough.
All right, here we go. So is Fast X the dead bottom for you? You don't even care to see
Oh,
that
yeah,
one?
I will not. I will not see Fast X, possibly ever.
Oh, wow. All right, The Little Mermaid live action came out the week after that. I have yet to see this. It's going to be playing on the cruise that I'm going to, because it's a Disney cruise, so I might watch it then. But I feel no urgent need to watch this one. The hype hasn't been super hypey. And
I know Mjolnir wants to see it. I really don't, for a number of reasons, but
you've been vocal about your disliking of Disney live actions.
Yeah, but again, it sounds like this one is even I don't know. I feel like some of them were justified by the fact that they were trying to do things differently, even though I disagreed with what they were doing or how they were doing it.
Mulan, what?
Mulan's in another league. Mulan is so far worse than all the other ones, and then pretty much any movie around that. Anyways, but I don't know. I was just it's also what are you going to do about this movie? Are you going to be aiming for nostalgia, or are you going to try to fix things? And then it's how would you even fix a story about a 16-year-old girl who just refuses to listen to her daddy because she fell in love with this guy she saw once and then basically, betrays everything she's ever known or lived for? Like, this is just, like, in all the, like, don't fall in love with one guy, the thing that Disney keeps hanging a lantern to, and then, but, like, never really addressing, like, I feel like Ariel is, like, egregiously bad, which is normal. She's a 16-year-old girl. Like, she's the youngest of 7. Well, 6. 6? Yeah. She's the youngest of 6. All girls. She is completely overshadowed, coddled. Like, there's no way she would act like a reasonable human being. But at the same time, this is what your story is. I don't know. It was just... And then, like... I don't know what was added. It didn't seem like much was added, and the almost photorealistic CGI animals just look weird.
Yeah.
And I don't get it.
I've said
And,
this
like,
before. These Disney live action movies, it's impossible to please everybody because there's people who want it. It's like, if you're gonna make it, like, don't make it exactly the same as the original. And then there's other people who are like, they didn't include this character, or they didn't include the music. It's like,
yeah, and, like, I just... My big thing is that from everything I've seen about this one and others, right, like, they're not kids' movies. I'm not going to show this to my daughter until she's old enough to be able to make some kind of objective comparison between the cartoon and the live action, right? Like, which is going to happen when she's a teenager. And even there, I'd only really do that if she's interested in movies.
mm-hmm. So nothing. I have nothing to say about that one at this point. Maybe I'll have seen it before, at some point before the show ends.
You'll give us a Bat Cookie score update.
Now, are you less interested in this than you are Fast X? Or are you more...
I'm less interested in Fast X.
Oh, tragic.
I have watched... Look, I had 2 sisters, one of whom picked either Princess Diaries of the Little Mermaid every time it was her turn to pick a movie for movie night. And for several years, we went on rotation every week. Like, somebody would pick, like, one of the 4 kids would... So, like, there was a point in my life where I watched that movie, like, once a month. So...
I have seen the Princess Diaries I saw it for the first time with Tater Tot. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, the first one's pretty good. The second one has Chris Pine.
Don't spoil it. I haven't seen it yet. Don't spoil it.
Okay, well, the second one has Chris Pine in it. That's not a spoiler, but, like, yep.
And then last weekend, yes, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was unleashed in theaters. Oh boy, Tater Tot and I saw this.
Yeah, I do want to see that one somewhat.
I was left speechless at the end. It was, like, literally
the only thing I've heard that's not negative, but, like, people are like, is that it wasn't better than the first one. But that's pretty much the only pseudo negative I've heard about it.
What I've been telling people is that the first one I had a surprisingly, like, deep, like, emotional connection to that I wasn't expecting when I saw it. And so I feel like I was expecting the second one to kind of replicate that same experience for me. And it didn't. But I could acknowledge, like, there was a different animation style every time they went into a new universe. Like, the first one, it's mostly set in the same world, right? And there's people from other universes coming in. But in this one, they travel to different worlds, and you really get to see, like, the variety of different animation techniques they're using. They really elevate the story. They take everything that was kind of presented in the first one and takes it to another level. And
I feel like the expectations for the first Spider-Verse were meh. People were really not sure what to expect. Also, people were not sure what to expect from Sony Animation because they didn't have a great track record at that point. Like, nothing, like, it wasn't terrible or people didn't hate the studio or anything, but nobody was expecting that level from it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there were a lot of expectations on this movie, and if it falls a little short for some people, I think that's normal. But yeah, it doesn't seem to by any, like, it doesn't seem like it's a bad movie by any, like, standard, except that it wasn't as dominant and surprisingly good as the first one, but like that would have been nigh miraculous if it had been able to surprise people the same way the first one had.
There were actually a couple moments where I was genuinely surprised. Like the plot went in directions I wasn't expecting. And there were so many amazing Easter eggs for like I want to tell you about them now, but I don't want to spoil them. For fans, longtime fans of Spider-Man like me, this movie like did like way more than No Way Home did because like No Way Home paid homage to like the different Spider-Man movies, but this was like paying homage to comics, TV, video games, and movies. Like it really felt like people who loved Spider-Man made the movie, and I received that love, if you will, watching the film.
Yeah, and like again, No Way Home was supposed to be a tribute to the movies more than Spider-Man, but this had the opportunity to basically do for Spider-Man what the new Space Jam kind of could have done.
Yes. So I'll give Across the Spider-Verse like 3.7 out of 4 bad cookies.
A solid score.
It is spectacular. And then finally, okay, so sorry, before I mention the final movie that's come out since then that I have seen, where would I know you have to see it because of your wife, but
I think it's still it would still be after D&D for one I'm most excited about.
So D&D and then Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Or Spider-Verse 2.
And then finally this past weekend, Transformers Rise of the Beasts came out in theaters.
So that's a sequel to Bumblebee, right?
Yes.
Like,
there are two references to the Bumblebee movie.
Okay.
One, but say
it's not the Michael Bay universe anymore at all.
They haven't been definitive about that, but they're considering, you see the like Optimus and those other characters like kind of fall to earth in the first Shia LaBeouf Michael Bay movie, and this one establishes that they've been on Earth for 7 years since the events of the Bumblebee movie. It's kind of like an X-Men First Class situation where it's like there's enough here that contradicts what came before that we have to assume it's a new story.
Right, or that they're going to do an alternate timeline at some point or something, but yeah.
Yeah. Your boy Peter Dinklage, he's in this movie. He voices the main Terracon villain.
Nice.
I was very hyped for this because it was, introducing the Maximals and the Beast Wars characters into the live action movies. They're in it, but they're not the focus.
Okay.
Like Cheetor has like one line of maybe 2 lines of dialogue. I think Rhinox has mostly grunts. So they're there, but they're not the focus, and it just made me want them to do like an actual Beast Wars movie.
I see. Well, maybe they will. I mean, apparently Transformers is still financially viable franchise to keep milking, so...
Yeah. It is wild to think that this, if you include Bumblebee, this is the 7th live-action Transformers movie since 2007.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Now, but having said that, I think this is probably one of my favorites of the live-action Transformers movies. Like, I've enjoyed most of them, but I can acknowledge the problems. There's none of the crude, irreverent humor, no jokes about, like, dogs humping each other or people taking drugs or people validating their relationships with underage people. And the human, these movies.
So is it necessarily one of the better ones, or does it just not have the weird stuff that the Michael Bay movies have?
I think it actually is better. It's better for not having those things in them. And like there is still humor, like there's still things that are funny, and it doesn't rely on like, teenage boy humor to be funny. It has explosions in it and stuff, but the explosions aren't like front and center like they were with Michael Bay's take. And yeah, the human characters actually have a good reason to be there. Like there's
it is both better and classier.
Yeah,
like a better movie, but also just a better show.
Yeah. Like Anthony Ramos from Hamilton's like the main human in the movie, and I'm like, I don't hate you. You're enjoyable. You're charming. And I will spoil the ending for you because I know you're not going to see this. In the final scene of the movie, Anthony Ramos's character has a meeting with a recruiter from G.I. Joe.
Oh my gosh.
So
Are they going to make another new G.I. Joe movie? Because those are also all terrible. I mean, to varying degrees, but there's like...
The one with The Rock in it isn't that bad. Retaliation. I didn't hate that one.
Wait, is that... Which one is the one that ends in the Arctic?
I don't know.
I have a super vivid memory of watching this with my little sister. And there's like this final scene where like the you know, the base is exploding in the Arctic, and then the ice blocks that make up the base start sinking, and the submarine is going away, and then suddenly I'm just like, why is the ice sinking? And I could not, for the next 10 minutes, the last 10 minutes, which are supposed to be the climax of the movie, could not stop laughing about the fact that the ice was falling.
Right. I would love them just to make a Beast Wars movie at this point, but I'm also intrigued by this idea of a G.I. Joe Transformers combo movie. Why not? Something we haven't seen yet.
It's just going to be like a Hasbro crossover thing.
Yeah, Hasbro.
Oh my gosh. They're gonna put. Sorry, Jackie's excited. Jam is excited about it too. We're gonna put the D&D movie. They're gonna go to an alternate universe where there's G.I. Joe.
It could work. It's all Paramount. They can make it happen.
Well, it's also all Hasbro.
It's all Hasbro as well. So, with that being said, I'll give Transformers: Rise of the Beasts 2.5. Okay, I'll round it to 3.3 out of 4 bad cookies.
So as good as the Transformers 3, not Transformers 3, the as good as the third Guardian movie by that grade.
Yes. Yeah. And that is it. Those are all the pop culture, nerd, geek culture movies that have come out since our last episode. Yeah. And this coming week, The Flash finally comes out.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a movie. I'm gonna stick to my guns of I'm gonna see it just because Michael Keaton's in it, but
I hear it's pretty good, and I'm looking forward to it. I hear it's not perfect. I've heard the CGI is...
Look, any movie that has had that many like reworks and like messing around, even if the messing around is to try to make it better, is going to be like on some level have problems. Like there was no way for that movie to come out immaculate.
Yeah, totally. So in our next episode, which will be coming out in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about The Flash. So that'll give everyone lots of time to go and see it.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
And no need to pull anything out of the Bat Jar, because that's our topic for the next episode. So, yeah, Beeper, we're in the home stretch of episodes.
And we're sliding in for home, and we're gonna... Wait, the home stretch isn't... Does that have to do with baseball as well?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, I know.
Someone listening to this is cringing right now.
That's okay. I love sport ball. I actually do know a fair amount about a lot of sports. I shouldn't say things like that.
Right. So come back to the Bat Jar Podcast in 2 weeks when we talk about The Flash. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.
And keep running.